Welcome to the Privacy Mentor Podcast, your partner in the fight against identity theft, fraud, and cyber threats. I'm your host, Carrie. As we are in the tax filing season, our special guest today is here to give you tips about how to avoid tax season fraud. My special guest today is Ron Loecker. He is the Assistant Special Agent in charge of IRS Criminal Investigations Tampa Field Office. ASAC Loecker is responsible for overseeing the operations of the field office, including 7 supervisory special agents, a supervisory investigative analyst, and working groups in 9 different offices covering all of Central and Northern Florida. Welcome, ASAC Loecker, to the show.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I appreciate you coming on. So could you share with me just real briefly, what is it that your department, what your team, what do you guys do?
Sure. So IRS Criminal Investigation is a law enforcement arm of the IRS, and we investigate tax evasion, all the different tax crimes that you may have heard of, as well as money laundering. So we get into, on the federal side, most laws are motivated by greed. We don't have a federal murder statute per se. And so a lot of federal statutes are all about greed, whether it be drug crimes are motivated by greed. And so we do anything that has to do with money. If you're making money and committing crime, we can get involved in it. Our bread and butter, again, is tax evasion and tax crimes, but we do all sorts of fraud schemes as well.
Okay, so because your team does the investigation side, that means you are knee deep and well aware of all the fraud that can happen involving tax returns and tax related issues. And earlier, your team shared with me a document that you all put out with tips on how to avoid tax season fraud. And when I was looking at it, one of the things that stood out to me, because I don't think a lot of people pay much attention to it, it's fraud relating to a tax preparer. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. So it's just so important for folks to really give some thought and consideration to who you're choosing to be your tax preparer. Unfortunately, each year we conduct criminal investigations of tax preparers who put all sorts of false items on people's returns, oftentimes without the clients knowing what's going on. And so it is just vitally important for you to spend some time and really think through who you choose to be your return preparer. And there are things, simple things that you can do. Is this return preparer, are they open in August or during the off season? If they're the sort of fly-by-night place that just opens up just to get through tax filing season, I'd look somewhere else. Those individuals usually may anyway have training lapses and just might not know the best laws. And not only that, when the IRS comes knocking because there's a problem, they're not going to be around to help you out. So find someone who's there 24/7 and certainly has maybe been in the community for a while.
If I could interrupt you right there, because you just mentioned something that I think is really important. So if you end up having one of these fly-by-night tax preparers and they end up doing something wrong, who's liable for that? Is it the tax preparer or is it the taxpayer?
A great point, Carrie. So the issue really comes down to it's your tax return and you are ultimately responsible. So if that return preparer files a return with bogus items on it and gets you a nice whopping $5,000 refund or something that you were not entitled to, when the IRS comes knocking, they're going to come knocking on your door saying you owe us back that $5,000. Now, the return preparer may have some fees and penalties on the side. We'll deal with him later. But again, the taxpayer is ultimately responsible for what's on his or her own tax return. So it's really important to choose wisely and not fall victim to their prey.
That is something that I'm sure a lot of people are not aware of, and you would think that, I'm hiring a professional and we're in this, I call it the outsource economy, where we just want to not have to be responsible for anything ourselves. And we just find an app or find somebody else to do it. But in this case, the buck stops with you, regardless of if you do the return yourself or if somebody else does it. So that's really crucial. So what are some of the red flags to look out for? I know on the tip sheet, it said something about, them trying to get you to sign a blank tax return form. Talk about what are some of the red flags that somebody might look out for.
Yeah, that's right. So you never want to sign anything that you don't know what you're signing. And certainly a blank tax return is the same, because then obviously they're going to take that return and put numbers on there that may or may not be correct. So you want to always, sign the return, get a copy of the completed return. You want to make sure that the numbers are correct. Again, I know a lot of people are not tax and CPA proficient, but just taking a general look at the tax return, and looking at the numbers and making sure that there's not some random entry that you haven't discussed previously with your return preparer. Also, sometimes return preparers will be what we call ghost preparers. In other words, they're getting paid to prepare returns, but they don't put their name on it. That is a huge red flag, because obviously they don't want the IRS to know who's involved with the preparation when things go south. So make sure that you got a reputable return preparer. They should have what we call a PTIN, a taxpayer identification number. You can ask about that. Now, unfortunately, it's not, they can give you any old number, so that's not a foolproof method. But to the extent they give you the deer in the headlights look, that should be telling for you to maybe walk down the street a little further. Again, as I said, make sure they're in business year round, and that they're asking you all the questions that you would think they should be asking. If they're just putting down numbers and haven't asked you about maybe your charitable givings or some other things, something just might not be right with that return preparer. There's a lot of questions to be asked, and they should take their time doing it.
So if a tax preparer starts off by saying, I can guarantee to get you a return of $5,000, that should be a red flag.
Yeah, well, that's the other thing. So often you'll see this, return preparers, whether it be ads outside their building or on the news or whatever, talking about large refunds. And, frankly, your tax return is what your tax return is. The numbers aren't magical. They come based on the law. And so there's no magic way to get a large refund other than maybe cutting corners that you don't want to ultimately cut.
So what are some ways that they could look or to verify if someone is actually a legitimate taxpayer? Is there a website that they could go to, or what are some things that you'd recommend?
Sure. Well, irs.gov's got a lot of great information on it. I recommend your listeners to check that out in terms of all different updates and scam warnings as well. But in terms of your return preparer, you can get their PTIN and check that out on the website and verify that they are registered. Again, that just is a registration. That doesn't necessarily mean that the IRS is endorsing that individual for the veracity of the returns that they're going to file. So you have to really kind of look all the way around and make sure, again, that there's someone that's been in business for a while. Ask your friends, who have they been helping? Who have they been using? If you're new to the area, find someone that's been in the community for a few years and has a reputable, good name. Better Business Bureau may be another area that you could check out. There could be complaints filed against them that might give you some clues on to whether you would like to use them or not.
Yeah, and that's a great idea. Use the internet. You could take the name of that tax preparer, and instead of just putting the tax preparer's name, put the tax preparer's name or the name of their company followed by complaints. And you'll get a whole bunch of different results than if you just put their name, because sometimes people manipulate the search engine optimization and all the bad stuff's moved to like page 2 or 3. So definitely use the internet and read the reviews, and then look at a broad range of them. Don't just read the first review and go with that. Look for a couple other ones. So yeah, thanks. I appreciate you telling people to use the internet. Better Business Bureau, it's another great one to do. So a couple other things that you had listed on there, and I know, we probably have all heard this ad nauseum about the imposter phone calls, about people calling, pretending to be from the IRS, and then it moved to phishing emails. Now it's going to text messages. Is that correct?
Yeah, the scam's going to go where it works, right? And so these scammers are out there every day thinking of new ways to come and get you. And so no matter what method they use, whether it be email or a telephone or a text message or WhatsApp or whatever else the next iteration may be, you really just have to use the old common sense of, what are they asking for and does that make sense? In terms of impersonation schemes, the IRS is not going to make phone calls to you or text messages to you or emails to you in a threatening manner. You should be well aware that you have some IRS issues and you should get some correspondence, and you can make phone calls into us, of course. Now, I understand that waiting times can be a little bit frustrating right now, but again, you should know what you have going on with your tax returns in terms of correspondence with the IRS. And you're never going to get a threatening, demanding email or text from us. And certainly we're not going to ask that you could run down to your local convenience store and buy a prepaid debit card. So if you get those sort of correspondence, ignore them, hang up, and move on about your day.
Perfect. And what about Bitcoin? Do you guys take payment in Bitcoin?
No, if it has anything to do with cryptocurrency, definitely walk away. It is not the IRS.
Perfect. Yeah, because that's the spin we're seeing on all these phone scams this year. Because everybody knows if you hear gift card, hang up. So now they're moving to cryptocurrency. And because people don't really understand it, they're unfortunately having some success with that. So that's a great tip, but I appreciate you sharing that. So what are some other things that the listeners should know about how to protect themselves during this tax season?
Sure. Well, going back on your last comment on phishing schemes and getting impersonation scheme, phone calls, texts, whatever, you can go to the TIGSA's website. That's well, you can report it at phishing with phishing, phishing at irs.gov, and report those sort of things. That goes over to an agency called TIGSA, the Treasury Inspector General for Tax Administration. They investigate that, but they track those sort of things. So it is important to know. Sometimes those are from call centers from overseas, and they're able to shut down those telephone numbers. So it's nice to be able to get the reporting on that and shut them down as quickly as we can, keep other people from falling victim. The other thing you can do is, to the extent you suspect either a return preparer or others of committing tax fraud or tax evasion, you can report that using a form called 3949A. And again, irs.gov has wonderful information and walks you through a lot of different things. You can also find information on that form at irs.gov, but it is a 3949, and we will always welcome tips from the public.
Yeah, and I got to say, out of all the government agency websites that we have to work with when we're, helping victims through various types of identity theft and fraud, yours is one of the easiest to navigate. And really, if there's anything that you go to irs.gov, and again, it's .gov, not .com. So don't go to .com, that's not them. But when you go to the website, they have a search box right on the top corner of their homepage. And that allows you to put in, so if you want to learn more about how to report someone or how to report a tax preparer, or if you have any questions about your tax return, just type that in and it brings up a bunch of things right from their website. Because other websites, when you search on the search box, it searches the entire web. So this one, I don't know who's handling your website, but I think they've done a great job. It's very user-friendly. So thank you.
Great to hear. Yeah, I'm glad you like it.
Well, I appreciate you coming on and sharing with us some tax tips, because we are in the height of tax season right now, and anything we can do to help alleviate some of the stress and fears, we are always open to that. So thank you very much, ASAC Loecker, for coming on. And if you'd like to get a copy of the 10 tips to avoid tax season fraud, check out the show notes and we'll have a link to the document. So thank you all for tuning in, and until next time, stay safe. Thanks for joining me on another episode of Privacy Mentor. Don't forget to subscribe on Apple, Spotify, Google, or anywhere else you listen to your favorite podcast shows. If you love the show, please share with your friends, and don't forget, give us a 5-star review. For additional information, show transcriptions, and notes, visit kursky.com/podcast.